Welcome to the MangaLove channel. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to MangaLove so you won't miss any of the newest stories. Now, let's dive right into today's story. Chapter 1. The Summoning and the Accidental Proposal. Tristan Vale wasn't supposed to summon anyone, especially not the king of the underworld. He was supposed to be making content. His cramped studio apartment looked like every artist's bad habit. A half-finished canvas leaning against a peeling wall, jars of cloudy paint water, a single cracked window rattling with the pulse of downtown traffic. The place smelled faintly of turpentine, pear, body spray, and smoke from the incense he bought on clearance. Tonight's mission: go viral on TikTok. He had black candles from a thrift shop, a dusty red-covered book labeled Soulmate Invocation Circa, and a ring light balanced on top of a mug that read, "I make poor decisions professionally." Tristan grinned into the camera. All right, guys, apparently this ritual helps you find your soulmate, because nothing says romance like accidentally summoning Satan before bedtime. He winked. His comments were going to eat this up. He opened the old book, flipping past drawings of circles and runes he couldn't pronounce. The pages were thin, almost translucent, the ink brown and looping. He squinted. Okay, Latinish gibberish, yada yada. Step 1, light candles. Check. Step 2, speak the vow from your heart. Tristan leaned closer to the camera, whispering dramatically, "From the heart, my ass." Then, just to sell the bit, he raised one hand and announced, "If you're real, marry me." The air shifted. At first, it was small, a hum in the floorboards, the flicker of candlelight bending in the wrong direction. Then, the world inhaled. Lightning clawed across the window pane. The glass flashed white, shadows curling up the walls like living smoke. Every candle inverted its flame, blue burning downward. The pages of the book lifted as if caught in a silent storm. Tristan's laughter cracked. Okay, cool effects, universe. You can stop." The last thing he heard was the deep sound of a door unhinging inside the dark. Then, "Did you just propose?" The voice was velvet over gravel, calm, amused. Tristan spun, eyes wide. A man stood in the center of the room, tall enough to make the ceiling feel low, dressed in a black suit that shimmered faintly, as if woven from the night itself. His tie glinted silver, his eyes stranger. Still, black shot through with faint rings of light, like eclipses turned inside out. His smile was not mortal. Tristan pointed at him with his phone. "What? No. You're like a cosplayer who got lost, right?" The stranger tilted his head. "Lost? Hardly. You called. I answered." "Called?" "No, it was a TikTok trend. It's supposed to—" Tristan scrambled backward, tripping over a paint can. Okay, who even are you?" The man's grin widened. "Zaire, king of the underworld. Death, desire, etc. Titles get tedious." He gestured lazily. "You, however, seem to have asked for my hand in marriage." Tristan blinked once, twice, then said flatly, "I'm throwing this mug now." Thunk. It hit Zaire squarely in the shoulder and bounced off without so much as a dent. "Ah," Zaire murmured. "Feisty." Tristan's vision swam. Nope, not real. I'm hallucinating from paint fumes." And promptly fainted. Before he hit the ground, Zaire's gloved hand caught his wrist. For a heartbeat, their skin met. Gold light bloomed faintly between them, soft as breath. Zaire's eyes flickered in surprise, then softened. "Intent binds," he whispered. When Tristan woke, it was morning, or whatever passed for morning in a world that didn't have sun. His studio looked wrong, too clean. The paint-stained floor gleamed like obsidian. His coffee table had turned into black marble veined with silver. And across from him sat Zaire, legs crossed, flame rolling idly in his palm like a pet. Tristan yelped, "You're still here?" "Where else would I be? You proposed." What? Zaire's tone was patient, like explaining gravity to a particularly charming idiot. By ancient law, a proposal made with intent, spoken from the heart, creates a bond. You said, and I quote, "If you're real, marry me." That was sarcasm. Intent, Zaire said, eyes gleaming, doesn't understand sarcasm. Tristan groaned into his hands. Oh my God, I'm married to a mythical bureaucrat? I prefer king, Zaire said dryly. And you are not yet fully bound. The rights remain incomplete. But until annulment, you are technically my consort. Consort? Tristan repeated weakly. That sounds illegal. Only if you decline consent, Zaire said. The fire vanished from his hand as he stood. And I require that more than any law. Something in the way he said it, calm, absolute, made Tristan's pulse jump. Zaire took one step closer, close enough that Tristan could see how the light bent around him. The scent hit next. Cool sweetness, like sugar melted over stone. Something dark and magnetic beneath. Zaire tilted his head. You fainted rather impressively. Allow me. Before Tristan could flinch, Zaire reached out, cupping his chin to check for a bruise near his jaw. His fingers were warm, gloved in soft leather, and the touch sent a spark racing straight down Tristan's spine. Breathe, Zaire murmured. You're safe. The words brushed his skin like a promise. Tristan's breath caught, and then Zaire stepped back, hands falling away as if he'd remembered himself. A strange silence hummed between them, full of electricity and the scent of ozone. Then shadows rippled under the couch. Tristan jolted. What now? The floor stretched open, edges glowing pale silver. Shadows twined into a circle, and a voice floated up. Crisp, formal, slightly exasperated. Your Majesty. A woman emerged from the dark, all sharp heels and clipboard, her eyes like pools of ink. The court requests confirmation of your marriage claim. Zaire's smile twitched. Mora, this is inconvenient timing. Every time is inconvenient when you summon from the mortal plane, she said briskly. Her gaze shifted to Tristan. And this must be the petitioner. Petitioner? Tristan squeaked. More about your Majesty? He pointed to himself. You mean him, right? He's the... She means you, Zaire interrupted, amused. Tristan's jaw dropped. No, absolutely not. I am not. Mora ignored him. Preparations for the binding are already underway. Should I alert the heralds? Zaire sighed, the sound like rolling thunder. Not yet. He hasn't decided. Decided what? Tristan snapped. Whether to come see the underworld and undo what he's done, Zaire said, voice softer now, or to stay here and hope the bond fades on its own. Tristan hesitated. Undo it? You can do that? Yes, but only if we stand before the courts of origin and rescind your vow before the bond roots too deep. Tristan looked at the open portal. Inside was darkness, but it shimmered faintly, like the promise of something not entirely awful. Curiosity thrummed under his skin. Fear, too, but curiosity was louder. You mean, he said slowly, I could actually go there? Zaire's smile curved like a secret. Of course, my realm recognizes intent, remember? And right now, I think you intend to see how deep this mistake goes. Mora's foot tapped impatiently. Your Majesty, the veil won't hold forever. Tristan's heart hammered. This is insane. Zaire extended a hand, gloved fingers gleaming in the candlelight. Most worthwhile things are. For a long second, Tristan stared. The smart thing would be to stay, call a priest, delete his TikTok, pretend none of this happened, but he'd always been bad at doing the smart thing. He took the hand. The air folded inward. Neon city lights stretched like liquid glass, melting into ribbons of silver and blue. The hum of traffic turned into the whisper of bells, distant and low. When the world steadied, Tristan found himself standing on a black marble balcony overlooking a city built from shadow and light. Towers of onyx curved into skies painted with a perpetual eclipse. Below, rivers of faint fire wound like veins through darkness. He exhaled shakily. Oh, wow. Welcome, Zaire said beside him, voice low, to my home. The great hall beyond them glowed faintly, chandeliers dripping starlight ice. Along the walls, creatures of every shape and grace bowed low as they passed, horned, winged, luminous-eyed, and every one of them murmured the same thing. Your Majesty. Tristan squeaked loudly. Stop that, I'm not. The chorus ignored him. Zaire chuckled under his breath. You'll get used to it. I don't think I will. Zaire's gaze softened. Then I'll make sure they bow for the right reasons. Tristan blinked, not sure what that even meant, but the warmth in Zaire's tone felt like sunlight where none should exist. They walked together down the obsidian hall. Mirrors lined the walls, tall, rippling things that reflected not just bodies, but emotions, colors flickering around each shape. In one, Tristan caught their reflections, a mortal in messy jeans and a paint-splattered hoodie beside a man carved from darkness and light. Their hands brushed as they walked past. For a moment, the reflection shifted, no longer accidental, but inevitable. And somewhere deep in the underworld, a storm began to stir. Chapter 2. My demons won't stop bowing to me. Tristan woke to the heavy scent of sandalwood and sugar. For a moment, he thought he was back in his apartment, maybe in the middle of a very committed nap. Then silk brushed his skin. Not the thrift store kind, the real ruin your credit card kind. His hands slid across sheets softer than sin, and when he opened his eyes, the ceiling above him shimmered faintly, as if clouds were trapped inside black glass. He sat up too quickly. The sheets fell away, revealing that he was dressed, or undressed, in a black silk robe tied with a crimson sash. It fit too well, suspiciously well. Oh no, he whispered. Someone's been playing supernatural dress-up Barbie with me. The door creaked. A tall, broad-shouldered demon stumbled inside, golden horns tipped like candlelight. He wore armor that looked both intimidating and slightly too tight around the shoulders. The moment their eyes met, the demon gasped and, dear God, face-planted into a bow so deep his forehead almost hit the marble. Your Majesty, he boomed, muffled by the floor. Breakfast has been prepared. Tristan blinked. What? I'm not Majesty. I'm barely a mooring person. The demon remained on the ground. Forgive me, Your Majesty. Shall I carry the tray myself? Do you prefer your eggs golden or bleeding with the screams of the damned? What? No, just normal eggs, Tristan sputtered. And stop calling me that. The demon's wings fluttered nervously. As you command, my king. Tristan dragged a pillow over his face. I can't rule hell in pajamas. From the doorway, a low chuckle rolled through the room. Zaire leaned against the frame, dark suit immaculate, amusement gleaming like silver beneath his eyes. You could, he said, but it would cause a riot. Tristan peeked over the pillow. Do you people just, bow and scream breakfast orders every morning? Only when we like someone, Zaire said smoothly, walking in. And I see Kellen has decided to worship you early. Kellen, the golden-horned demon, bowed to him, but made a strangled sound halfway between pride and panic. I was merely fulfilling protocol. Protocol revoked, Zaire said mildly. Go fetch Mora before our guest develops a coronary. Yes, sire. Kellen vanished in a puff of smoky embarrassment. Tristan sank back against the bedpost. So, this is my life now. Zaire tilted his head. Temporarily, unless you decide otherwise. Which I plan to do, Tristan said firmly, as soon as I figure out how to undo this, whatever this is. Then you'll need orientation. Zaire's voice softened, the command threaded with care. Eat first, then I'll show you my realm properly. You deserve to see what your words built. Tristan's brow furrowed. You make it sound like I actually meant it. Zaire's lips quirked. Intent always hides inside humor. The palace was less fire and brimstone and more architectural seduction. Zare guided him through vast halls veined with silver light, past walls where portraits whispered their own gossip. They stepped into a garden where glass lilies bloomed under a ceiling of eclipse. No sun, just an eternal ring of light suspended above them. "Nothing wilts here," Zare said, brushing a petal with his gloved fingertips. "Even grief grows roots." Tristan watched the petal quiver. "It's beautiful and also vaguely threatening." "Apt," Zare murmured. They continued, and Tristan found himself laughing despite everything. The library's books murmured as they passed, voices low as if gossiping about them. The shelves rearranged themselves every time Tristan sneezed. "I swear that one just judged me," Tristan muttered. "It did," Zare said, amused. "It dislikes mortals who fold corners." "Oh, come on. I was 8. They paused in a courtyard where the sky hung like a bruise, streaked violet and silver. A fountain bubbled with liquid shadow that sparkled faintly at the edges. "This is the heart of the palace," Zare said. "It mirrors the one who rules it. It's shifting lately." Tristan turned to find him watching, expression unreadable. "Because of me, perhaps," Zare said softly. "The realm recognizes intent. Remember, even when you don't." Tristan's stomach flipped. "You have to stop saying that like it's sexy." "I'm not trying to," Zare said, and then, quieter, "That's the problem." The silence that followed felt alive. As they passed through a corridor lined with mirrors, Zare stopped him gently, placing one gloved hand near his waist, not touching, but close enough to guide. "When they bow," he said, voice like smoke over glass, "you don't flinch. You incline your head. Grace makes fear bow first." Tristan swallowed, trying to mimic the motion. Zare adjusted his stance, fingers hovering near his hips. "Here," he murmured. "Straight spine, shoulders easy. Breathe through it." Tristan exhaled. His reflection stared back, wide-eyed, mortal in borrowed regality. And behind him, the king of the underworld gazed, dark and unbearably fond. Their eyes met in the glass. It felt like static caught in skin. Their breath mingled, shared air, trembling between them. The distance was gone before either realized it. Tristan turned just slightly, and the corner of his mouth brushed Zare's. The sound that escaped Zare wasn't a growl. Not quite. It was restraint sharpened into breath. Then a cough. Mora stood at the door, clipboard like a divine weapon. "If you two are done testing gravitational pull, we have scrolls." Zare's eyes flicked shut. He stepped back first. "Later," he said softly. Tristan's pulse was a riot in his chest. He wasn't sure if he wanted to laugh or combust. In the throne chamber, a cathedral carved from night, Mora stood beside another figure, a tall, quiet demon with skin like inkstone and eyes white as paper. "I," Zare introduced, "Archivist of Vows." He bowed deeply. "An honor, Your Majesty. Your case is unprecedented." Tristan crossed his arms. "I'm guessing that's bad." "Amusing, actually, but yes, potentially catastrophic." The archivist unrolled the scroll, symbols glowing faintly. "The law of intent states that once a proposal is accepted by an immortal, it binds unless both hearts remain unchanged by the 7th midnight. If even one shifts, the bond solidifies," Zare finished, eyes steady on Tristan. "Eternal, unbreakable." Tristan blinked. "Wait, so if one of us catches feelings, I'm doomed?" Mora smirked. "In so many words, yes." "This is ridiculous," Tristan threw his hands up. "There has to be a loophole." "There is," the archivist said serenely. "You spend 7 days together. By the 7th night, if you both wish to separate, the vow dissolves." "But if not," Tristan groaned. "Of course, it's the underworld. You love your deadlines." Zare's voice softened. "You are free to leave at any time, Tristan. I will not keep you in chains you do not choose." He turned away then, but his hand lingered in the air, suspended between reach and retreat, just long enough for Tristan to feel its ghost. By afternoon, Tristan found himself sitting beside there at what could only be described as hell's version of a city council meeting. It was chaos, beautiful, absurd chaos. A banshee with flawless eyeliner complained that her whales were being commercialized without consent. A fairy demon union demanded better boat wax. A tiny imp yelled about taxation. Tristan blinked, half laughing, half overwhelmed. Do you deal with this every day? Eternity breeds paperwork, Zaire said dryly. At one point, a ghost child approached, a small thing with eyes too big, clutching a broken locket. Tristan crouched instinctively. Hey, he said softly, you okay? The child nodded uncertainly. I lost my song. Zaire looked ready to intervene, but Tristan smiled. Then we'll make a new one. He hummed off-key. Ridiculous, but the child giggled, the sound echoing faintly like wind chimes. Zaire's gaze lingered on him longer than it should have. When Tristan stood, their shoulders brushed. A spark of ozone snapped through the air. Warm, wild, alive. Zaire cleared his throat. You are unexpectedly good at diplomacy. Tristan smirked. Please, I've dealt with art dealers. Same energy, less eyeliner. Zaire almost smiled. Almost. Later, under a sky that wasn't sky at all, Tristan found himself on the palace balcony. The city of shades stretched endlessly below. Rivers of light twisting like veins through darkness. No wind, no sound, but their breathing. Zaire stood behind him, a quiet shadow. You carry yourself differently already. Tristan huffed. I'm trying not to trip in front of the literal king of death. That's character development. Let me show you, Zaire murmured, stepping closer. His voice brushed Tristan's ear, low enough to make air tremble. 5 steps forward, shoulders easy, chin up. Tristan obeyed, half out of pride, half because his brain had turned to static. Zaire's count was a whisper. 1, 2, 3. At 4, Tristan turned too soon. His breath collided with Zaire's, their mouths brushing, barely. Accident or instinct, or something hungrier than either could admit, they froze. The moment stretched heartbeat to heartbeat. Zaire's pupils flared, then softened. He drew back first, voice rough silk. Not unless you want it. Tristan couldn't speak. The taste of him, lightning and sugar, still clung to the air. When he finally looked down at his hands, they trembled faintly. He didn't need to say it out loud to know the truth was already forming. He did want it. Chapter 3. A Mortal in Heat of Embarrassment. Mortal food, Tristan announced to the palace kitchen, hands planted on marble as black as spilled night. We are making mortal food. Dozens of eyes, glowing, slitted, smoky, and one that might have been made of polished bones, stared back. Then a tiny imp with ears like torn paper scrambled onto the counter, proudly clutching a whisk. Ash, the imp declared, thumping his chest with the whisk handle. Souse chef, I learned how to sauté from a documentary about volcanoes. We are not sautéing lava, Tristan said, rolling up the sleeves of his borrowed robe and tying a kitchen towel around his waist like a battle standard. We're making pasta, sauce, salad, cake if we have structural integrity left. Ash's eyes went as wide as saucers. Cake is a mortal myth like monogamy and punctuality. It's flour and sugar, Tristan said, rummaging through a cupboard that reorganized itself every time he reached for something. And love, but mostly flour and sugar. Zaire didn't materialize so much as condense, as if the air decided to be him. He leaned in the doorway, suited, immaculate, hands in his pockets, the suggestion of a smile tucked into one corner of his mouth. The kitchen's shadows leaned toward him like flowers toward sun. You're certain you want to wage war on my kitchen, little chaos? He asked. Absolutely, Tristan said. Think of this as diplomacy. Food is a truce with butter. Zaire's eyes warmed. Very well, I'll observe.
Do not help, Tristan warned, pointing a wooden spoon that looked suspiciously like a wand. This is a mortal rite. I need to prove I can contribute something besides panic. Ash, meanwhile, had discovered the flower. A small cloud erupted when he tried to open the bag with his teeth. A lesser creature might have stopped, but Ash was made of enthusiasm and chaos. He began to shovel flour onto the counter with both hands, humming a funeral march. "Gentle," Tristan yelped. "We're making a volcano, not burying Pompeii." "I thought we were not sautéing lava," Ash said sincerely. Tristan sifted flour into a bowl, cracked eggs with the focus of a surgeon, and began to knead.
The dough fought him. He fought back. He lost gracefully. Within minutes, flour had staged a coup against all surfaces and won. His curls collected a pale dusting. His cheeks went streaked when he tried to wipe sweat with the back of his hand. "Look at me," he said grimly to the dough. "I have painted with substances that should have legally dissolved my fingers. You cannot defeat me." Across the counter, Ash had stuck his whisk into a bowl of sugar and was gazing at it with religious awe. "Snow," he whispered. Zer watched, not intervening, not directing, simply there, his presence like a steadying hand at Tristan's back. When Tristan glanced up, he found that gaze already on him, warm and intent, and something foolish and bright fluttered behind his ribs. They rolled pasta, they chopped garlic, they argued with a pot that tried to whisper insults in dead languages. When Tristan set a pan on a burner and the flame flared blue-black, he felt absurdly competent. "Now the sauce," he said, tipping tomatoes and basil into the pan. Ash stirred gently. Ash stirred as if exorcising a demon from the pan. The spoon clanged like a bell. From somewhere in the ceiling, an alarm coughed to life. A deep, resonant clang that reverberated through the bones of the palace. "What is that?" Tristan shouted over the echo. "Underworld fire alarms," Zer said, so calm it had to be deliberate. "Sulfur bells. They announce culinary incidents and attempted coups with the same enthusiasm. I am not burning. Okay, I might be burning." A ribbon of smoke rose. The sulfur bells deepened like a choir of offended monks. Kellen burst through a side door with a fire hook the size of a small boat. "Your Majesty, oh no!" "Stand down," Zer said, a velvet command that settled the bells and the beating heat in Tristan's neck. "It's under control." "I'm under control," Tristan protested, fanning the pan with a cutting board. "No, Ash, stop adding sugar. This isn't a funeral cake for your enemies." Ash froze, caught mid-dump. "But sweetness is love. Love doesn't need... Okay, love needs sugar, but not that much." Tristan wrestled the pan off the heat. The sauce simmered into obedience. The bells, sulky, faded into embarrassed muttering and then silence. For a breath, nobody moved. Then Zer laughed. It wasn't sardonic, it wasn't cruel. It was a low, unguarded sound that seemed to start in his chest and tumble out like warm thunder, surprised and delighted. Even the chandeliers seemed to listen. The whole kitchen paused, demons, imps, knives mid-air, as if the realm itself leaned in. Tristan's chest did something embarrassing and warm. He set the pan down, hands trembling with the aftershock of accomplishment and adrenaline. Zer's laughter made space around him, like being told the dangerous thing you'd done was not in fact unforgivable. "Again," Zer said, teeth bright in that rare smile. "Please, I haven't heard myself in centuries." "You should do it more," Tristan said before his brain could edit his mouth. "Laugh. I mean, not at me. Well, at me sometimes, but just do it." Zer's gaze softened. "Noted." Dinner somehow existed. Ash carried a bowl of salad like it was a crown jewel. The pasta glistened. The cake miraculously rose, as if hoping to be forgiven. They ate at a small table near a window that wasn't a window, watching a river of light coil through the dark city below. Tristan poured wine. His hands had stopped shaking. Zer's knee brushed his under the table. Accident or promise? Tristan didn't dare guess.
To diplomacy, Tristan said, raising his glass. To truce with butter, Zaire returned, eyes laughing again. They drank. The wine was rich and red, a velvet ribbon down Tristan's throat. He set the glass down, reached for the sauce ladle, and because fate has a sense of humor, tipped his own wine right into his lap. Perfect, he said through his teeth, jerking back from the splash. The robe bloomed with a dark stain. It felt cold, then sticky. Amazing! I love it here. Zaire rose so swiftly the chair never had time to scrape. Hold still, he said, and knelt. Tristan forgot language. Zaire knelt. The king of the underworld knelt between his knees, cool composure wrapped in a reverence that made Tristan's skin feel 2 sizes too tight. Zaire took Tristan's napkin and pressed it to the stain, blotting slowly. Not the leering kind of slow, the careful, meticulous sort that seeks permission with every move. His gloved thumb skimmed, barely there, along the ridge of Tristan's ribs where the robe parted. Tristan's pulse galloped madly against that touch, a drum behind his skin. Zaire glanced up, silver-black eyes close enough to count the rings around the pupils. His voice came softer than velvet. Here. Tristan nodded. Yeah. It came out more breath than word. Zaire dabbed again, and Tristan's breath stuttered. He could smell Zaire, midnight sugar over cold stone, something like rain on hot pavement. He could taste the wine still on his own tongue, the ghosts of basil and garlic in the air, the absurd fact that this was his life now. Zaire's hands stilled, his gaze flicked to Tristan's mouth and back. Something fragile and feral uncoiled between them, that creature made of sparks and want. Tristan leaned first, a tremor of ridiculous courage. Zaire met him halfway. The first kiss was tentative. Tristan expected cold and got heat, expected steel and found sugar. He tasted red fruit and something bright as a struck match. Zaire's free hand found the curve of Tristan's hip, pausing at the seam of the sash. A silent question that Tristan answered by tipping closer, lips parting. It was not a long kiss, but it rewrote the room. The kitchen went silent, except for the soft, private sounds 2 mouths make when learning each other in tiny, reverent steps. The door exploded inward. "Fire safety check!" Kellen bellowed, brandishing the hook like a holy relic. "I am here to— Oh, no, I did not see."
"I saw nothing. I am blind. Please continue." "No, stop. You should— Your Majesties, I apologize." He clanged the hook against his own helmet and fled, leaving a Kellen-shaped silence. Zaire exhaled, a shaky thing disguised as a laugh. He rested his forehead against Tristan's for a second. A demure shade of intimacy that felt somehow more indecent than the kiss. "Privacy spells," he said, standing and offering a hand. "Now." "Good idea," Tristan said, voiced 2 notes lower than usual. He let himself be led. Zaire's private chamber was not austere. Tristan had expected stark minimalism, but the room was a study in choices. Marble columns softened by velvet drapes, lamps that glowed like captured eclipse light. A stone basin overflowing with night orchids, their petals ink dark and edged with pale fire, opening and closing in a rhythm like breath. Zaire lifted one hand, fingers describing a slow, deliberate shape in the air. The room hushed further, as if wrapped in silk. "No sound in or out," Zaire said. "You may still leave. Say the word and the spell respects you first." Tristan stepped closer until he could see the seam of Zaire's mouth, the line of his jaw that had no business being that precise. You are listening to a narrated story on the MangaLove channel. Don't forget to share your thoughts about today's story. "Tell me to stop," Zaire murmured. "Don't you dare," Tristan breathed. The second kiss arrived without ceremony. A heat that matched the ache coiled in Tristan's chest since the balcony. It was greedy for a heartbeat, hands, mouths, a stumble that knocked Tristan back against the velvet couch.
both of them laughing into each other before the laughter broke into soundless sighs. Zair's finger slid along Tristan's throat, over the collarbone, mapping the heartbeat there through fabric. Tristan fumbled the top knot of his sash loose, and the robe loosened with a whisper. Shirts weren't exactly on, but they weren't exactly on. Tristan's fingers found the hard plane of Zair's shoulder under cloth, the line where power became muscle. Zair kissed like vow and like question, every press of his mouth drafted with the grammar of consent. Here, and if not, say. Tristan said yes without words, arching into the palm anchored at his sternum. The pressure there somehow more intimate than anything else. When the heat threatened to tip past intention, Zair broke the kiss and rested his cheek against Tristan's temple. He breathed like a man pulling a horse back from a cliff. "When you're ready," he said, voice threaded with restraint so evident it glimmered. "Not when fate says." Tristan's laugh was wrecked and delighted. "That's infuriatingly hot." Zair smiled against his skin. "It is torment for me as well." Tristan shifted until they were tangled in polite disarray, the world narrowing to breath and warmth and the ticking of some patient, otherworldly clock. Their hands found each other without looking. Zair laced their fingers and squeezed once, a pressure that landed somewhere under Tristan's ribs. Breathless laughter gave way to the sort of talk two people don't realize they're having until the room is full of it. Exes cataloged like antique sins. Tristan confessed to an art school love who had adored his talent and doubted his capacity for tenderness. Zair spoke quiet and unadorned of lovers who had wanted the god and not the man, the crown and not the neck that carried it. "I'm always too much," Tristan said, staring at their joined hands. "Too loud, too messy, too everything." Zair's thumb traced the back of his knuckles in one slow stroke. "I have been told the same, but they meant too much for them, not too much for the world." Tristan swallowed. "And for you?" "For me," Zair said, breath kissing Tristan's hairline, "you are correctly calibrated." The laugh that burst out of Tristan was helpless and quiet and ended in something like a whisper. "I don't know what being chosen feels like. Not really." "Like waking," Zair said, "in a place without sun. That is a miracle." They lay like that until the orchids opened and closed again. Eventually, the spell loosened with a sigh. Zair brushed Tristan's mouth with a kiss no deeper than a thank you. "Come," he said softly, "if we don't appear in public for hours after a fire alarm, Mora will publish a schedule about it." "That's a joke, right?" Zair's mouth tilted. "You'll see." In the corridor, the palace breathed around them. A scribe drifted past, trailing letters like fireflies. Two guards pretended not to stare at their rumpled collarbones. The archivist intercepted them with a bow so precise it made the air squeak. Their eyes were white as paper. Their smile, when it came, was kind. "Update," the archivist said, unrolling a fresh strip of parchment. 6 days remain for hearts unchanged." Tristan hummed, covering nerves with bravado. "Plenty of time." "An eternity," Zair said, but his gaze flicked to Tristan's mouth and away. And even the archivist, who lived among scrolls, looked briefly pleased. Mora arrived at speed, brandishing a tablet of polished slate. "Ceremonial schedule," she announced, just in case. Tristan peered at the slate. "Do you keep those in your shoes?" "Do not reveal my methods," Mora said gravely. Then, narrowing to Zair, "Appear in public or the rumors will breed like feral imps." "They already do," Zair said deadpan. They proceeded into a hall full of petitioners and curiosity. Tristan, on instinct and very little sleep, reached to steady himself on Zair's sleeve as he sidestepped a low-floating brazier. He barely touched, just a brush of fingers to fabric. The hall gasped. Demons, ghosts, courtiers collectively, audibly gasped, and then grinned with the bright, toothy satisfaction of people who live for plot developments. Kellen, who had reappeared like a golden-horned apology on legs, clapped before he remembered not to and turned it into a cough. Zair did not remove Tristan's hand. He tilted his arm so Tristan's fingers would be easier to keep there, as if making a place for them. I hate everyone, Tristan muttered, flushing. Zaire's sleeve under his fingers felt scandalously intimate for a public good. Not everyone, Zaire said low. Not me. The weight of that lodged under Tristan's breastbone and glowed. They survived court, barely, and escaped to the balcony when the corridors thinned and the palace stopped performing interest like opera. The night that wasn't night spread before them, slick with rivers of light, no wind, only their breathing and the distant hush of a world that believed in them enough to gossip. Again, Zaire said softly behind him, the walk. Tristan turned, half laughing, half daring. He stepped into the Tob lessons, chin up, shoulders easy, and the far more dangerous one that had nothing to do with etiquette. He walked towards Zaire. 1 step, 2, 3. By the 4th, his heart had abandoned dignity entirely. He didn't turn too quickly this time. He didn't stumble. He stopped just short of Zaire and looked at his mouth like it was a horizon he could choose. Only if you want it, Zaire said, the words a vow he kept speaking, even as desire roughened the edges. Tristan didn't say yes. He put his palms against Zaire's chest, feeling the heat beneath the suit, the thrum that might have been a heartbeat in a body that did not need one, and rose on his toes. The second kiss was longer, surer, less startled wish, and more chosen act. Zaire met him with an exhale that sounded suspiciously like relief. One hand cupping the nape of Tristan's neck, the other splaying warm and careful at his hip. The world pulled back like a tide. Their scents braided, amber smoke and wild pear, crushed obsidian and midnight sugar. And where they met, the air tasted like the first breath after lightning. Tristan's fingers curled in Zaire's lapel. Zaire kissed him as if patience was not a prison, but a gift he could give and still be satisfied. When they finally eased apart, the stars, or whatever watched here, had the decency to look away. Okay, Tristan whispered, forehead resting against Zaire's. Okay. Zaire's mouth curved. Okay. Below them, the city of shades shimmered. Inside, in some relentless chamber of laws, a clock turned its face toward the 7th night and began to listen. But out here on the balcony, with his hands still cupped around the heat of a king's body, Tristan didn't feel doomed. He felt seen. 6 days. He told himself that was an eternity to prove they were a beautiful mistake. He did not notice in the mirror of the window behind them that the colors around their reflected bodies brightened. He did not see the faint line, thin as a thread and bright as vow light, begin to stitch the space between their hands. He only kissed him again, quick and laughing, as if to seal the thing he wasn't ready to name. Chapter 4. Death Takes His Time. The hush court lived up to its name. It wasn't silent, it was listening. Sound moved like breath, hushed and reverent, each whisper shaped by marble arches and silver mist. Souls drifted in, pale as fog, their eyes still full of the world they'd left behind. Tristan stood just inside the doorway, hands clasped awkwardly behind his back. He'd never been to this part of the palace before. The floor looked like obsidian water, mirroring clouds that weren't there. The air tasted faintly of salt and snow. Zaire was already at the center. Gone was the teasing, perfectly suited king. This Zaire had shed adornment, his sleeves rolled, crown missing, expressions soft and unreadable. He knelt, an immortal god kneeling to a trembling soul. The figure was small, a child maybe 10 years old, translucent and clinging to a wooden toy.
Zaire's voice dropped low, the kind of sound that could anchor storms. "You are not lost," he murmured, "just between places." The child's lip trembled. "I was scared." "I know," Zaire said, and touched the child's shoulder with gloved fingers. "You were brave to come this far. I'll take you the rest of the way." The toy glowed faintly, and then quietly, like mist lifting. So did the child. Tristan's throat tightened. He'd thought of Zaire as a storm, a myth,
A man who could make light bend and demons bow. He hadn't imagined this. Mercy, wrapped in matte black. When Zaire stood, the soul was gone. Only the faint scent of morning rain lingered. He turned toward Tristan, expression unreadable. You shouldn't be here. The living rarely find comfort in this room. Tristan met his gaze. You're wrong. I just found plenty. Something flickered in Zaire's eyes. Surprise, then warmth. You see too much. I think maybe everyone else sees too little. He said it like a joke, but it stayed in the air long after they'd left the court. Later, Zaire led him to the River of Embers. The path wound through obsidian arches until the air turned golden with reflected heat. The river wasn't fire, not really. It glowed with molten shimmer, more light than flame, casting their skin in copper tones. A marble pool sat beside it, fed by slender falls of liquid radiance. Steam coiled like slow music. Join me, Zaire said, already shrugging out of his coat. Tristan blinked. Are we bathing in magma now? It won't burn, Zaire promised. This river remembers warmth, not destruction. Tristan hesitated, then kicked off his shoes, unknotted his robe, and stepped into the water. It was shockingly pleasant, wrapping him in liquid sunlight. Okay, he gasped, sinking to his shoulders. This is insane. I love it. Zaire laughed, deep and low, and for the second time since Tristan had known him, it wasn't a calculated sound. It was real. Tristan splashed him immediately.
The first wave hit Zaire's chest with a hiss. The king blinked, then smiled, slowly, dangerously. War? He asked. Revolution, Tristan said, and launched another handful of glowing water. Zaire retaliated in elegant, deliberate arcs, never breaking eye contact. It became play, then something gentler, Tristan floating on his back, hair haloed in ripples, while Zaire drifted close enough that their knees brushed under the surface. Your world, Zaire said after a while, voice hushed by heat, is so loud. You thrive in chaos. I thought that's why you liked me, Tristan said. I do. The words came simple, certain. You wake the stillness. Tristan's heart stuttered. Zaire moved behind him, sitting on the pool's stone ledge. His hands found Tristan's shoulders, thumbs tracing slow, mindless circles. Each motion sent warmth sinking deeper. Tristan tilted his head back until it rested against Zaire's thigh. They stayed like that, breathing the same humid air, the scent of obsidian sugar blending with pear and smoke. When Zaire leaned down, their foreheads brushed, and the air thickened. Ozone sweet, charged like stormlight. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Afterward, they returned to Zaire's chambers, the air still glowing faintly around them. Candles lined the walls, flames silver instead of gold, and their light trembled on Tristan's wet skin. Zaire touched his hand, the motion so soft it almost didn't exist. Say, stop. Tristan's voice came as a whisper. I'll say more instead. That broke the distance. Zaire kissed the pulse at Tristan's wrist first, reverent, slow. Tristan's breath hitched. The next kiss found his collarbone, then the corner of his jaw. The movement wasn't about claiming, it was about learning. Tristan cupped Zaire's face and pulled him up into a kiss that answered with every nerve. It was not the desperate kind. It was patient and deliberate, built on everything that hadn't been said. Their mouths parted only long enough for air.
Zaire's palms splayed across Tristan's chest, feeling the rapid beat under skin. You live so loudly, he murmured. Tristan laughed softly, breathless. You make dying look soft. Zaire's eyes softened. Love should make both easier. The words melted into another kiss, deeper this time. When Zaire pressed him back onto the cushions, it wasn't dominance, it was devotion. Tristan felt like every part of him was being memorized. The scene didn't burn, it glowed. Candles flickered in rhythm with their breath.
bodies outlined in soft gold. Hands met, fingers twined, hearts stumbled into sync. The air smelled like ozone and heat, and the impossible mingling of two beings who should never have touched, but did anyway. When Tristan trembled, Zaire only held him closer, whispering something ancient and gentle in a language that felt like a blessing. And when the moment faded, the room stayed bright for a long while. It couldn't last. By evening, the court buzzed with unrest. A ripple of discontent moved through the ranks of the older demons, those who had lived eons under rule without question. A minor duke named Smar had decided to test that. Tristan heard the commotion before he saw it. A crowd gathered in the hall of glass, whispers like insect wings. Zaire stood at the top of the dais, posture sharp with restrained irritation. Beside him, Smar, tall, gray-skinned, pride curdled into arrogance, was mid-speech. "The mortal weakens you," Smar said, his tone oily with reverence turned poison. "He is unfit for our throne. The realm requires purity of power, not pity." Tristan's hands balled into fists. Zaire's expression could have frozen stars. "Careful, Duke." But Smar pressed on. "Let him prove himself then. If the realm accepts him, so be it. If not, send him home before he breaks what you've built." Murmurs followed, curious, fearful. Tristan stepped forward before Zaire could speak. "Fine, I'll prove it." Every head turned.
Tristan, Zaire warned softly, the kind of tone that could still storms. But Tristan smiled tight, unshaken. "I'm not your burden to defend. Let me do it." He looked at the nobles. "You want a test? Then give me one. 3 even. I'll win, or I'll walk away." Smar sneered. "You presume courage is equal to worth." "No," Tristan said, voice steady, "but empathy." It hissed through her teeth. "Ooh, I like this." Zaire's jaw flexed, but he nodded once. "Very well. Trial of 3. Kellen, guard him." Kellen thumped his chest. "Yes, sir." The first trial began at dawn, or what passed for dawn beneath a false sky. Riddle of names. A circle of souls shimmered in the hall, each one whispering fragments of their names, desperate to be remembered. The challenge? Identify which soul belonged to a long-forgotten traitor, cursed to remain unnamed until truth set them free. Tristan listened for hours, brow furrowed. The voices overlapped, some pleading, some proud. He saw exhaustion in their eyes, guilt tangled with longing. When his turn came, he stepped into the circle and bowed. "I won't say it." Gasps rippled. Smar smiled coldly. "You forfeit?" Tristan shook his head. "No, you said to find the traitor's name, but what if he doesn't want it spoken again? Maybe the mercy is in silence." The chamber shuddered. One soul, a man whose face had blurred, smiled faintly and dissolved into light. The chains around the circle vanished. Zaire's gaze on him burned proud and soft at once. Feast of echoes. A long table stretched through the next chamber, crowded with ghosts who made no sound when they tried to speak. They mimed eating, laughing, crying. Tristan hesitated only a second before pulling out a chair. "If you can't talk," he said, "then I'll listen a different way." He began to serve them one plate at a time, talking as he did, telling stories about his ridiculous life. Art shows gone wrong, bad dates, moments when silence had hurt more than any insult. As he spoke, faint sounds returned, small laughter, sighs, the scrape of a fork. By the time he finished, the ghosts were gone. The table sat empty, warm plates steaming softly. Even Smar looked uneasy now. Bridge of breath. The final trial took place over a chasm filled with glowing mist. A narrow bridge hung suspended, brittle as glass. To cross, one needed balance and faith. Tristan hesitated at the edge. "What's the trick?" he asked Kellen quietly. "The bridge responds to breath," Kellen said. "Match another's rhythm, and it holds." Across the gap, Zaire waited. Tristan exhaled once, caught Zare's gaze, and began to breathe in sync. One inhale, one exhale. The bridge brightened under his feet. Each step brought him closer, until the last one, where the glass trembled. Zare reached out, his hand steady and sure. Tristan took it. The bridge solidified beneath them. The crowd exhaled as one. Zare turned to Smar. Satisfied? Smar bowed stiffly, color draining from his skin. Completely. Zare smiled with dangerous calm. Then you are relieved of your title. I hear the River of Embers needs a canoe inspector. The hall erupted in laughter. Tristan grinned, breathless, half in disbelief. He'd done it. Zare didn't laugh, but he watched Tristan like a man memorizing a miracle. Later, they met in the library, where the books whispered congratulations in rustling pages. Candles burned low, the light bending gold over their faces. Tristan leaned against a shelf, parts still hammering from the trials. I think I actually love you, he said so quietly. The sentence felt like an accident. Zare froze. The silence stretched, thick, real, terrified, and tender. Then Zare's smile arrived, slow and honest. Then I'll make eternity worth it. He cupped Tristan's cheek, thumb brushing his lower lip, and kissed him. It wasn't their first, but it felt like the one. The kind you carry into every afterlife that follows. Outside, somewhere deep in the underworld, a clock began to chime. 1 day left until the 7th midnight. Chapter 5. The Wedding in the Afterlife Finale. Hell had never been so loud or so floral. The grand hall of obsidian had been transformed into something halfway between a royal ceremony and an interdimensional HR meeting. Rows of silver lilies shimmered under torchlight, petals opening with faint sighs. A river of molten gold ran through the aisle like a decorative hazard. Mora was everywhere at once, clipboard in hand, barking orders in the calm tone of someone who had lost their sanity weeks ago and decided to weaponize efficiency instead. Table 6. No, you cannot seat imps beside banshees. It ends in screaming every time. Ash, stop licking the cake. Kellen, if you cry before the vows, I swear I will make you guard the storage vault for the next century. I'm not crying, Kellen sniffled. I'm Cree emoting. Ash popped his head from behind the cake, mouth ringed in frosting. This icing slaps. Get out, Morris said without looking up. Tristan stood at the entrance to the hall, half laughing, half panicking. Is it weird that this feels like the world's most dramatic group project? Zaire's voice came from behind him, warm as smoke. Only if you forget who's supervising. Tristan turned. For a moment, words left him. Zaire wore a suit that seemed to be made of gravity and light at once, black that shimmered when he moved, like the idea of night-made fabric. His hair fell slightly loose, a rare imperfection, and his smile, slight, private, was only for Tristan. Tristan's own outfit wasn't much less absurd. Obsidian-threaded silk, collar open just enough to make Mora sigh disapprovingly every time she passed. You clean up ridiculously well, Tristan murmured. I am Death, Zaire said mildly. Formality is half the job, right? Tristan said, trying not to stare too obviously. And the other half? Zaire stepped closer, his hand brushing Tristan's. To love the living until they stopped fearing me.
Tristan's chest went warm and useless. Yeah, he whispered, you're doing great at that. By the time the ceremony began, every demon, ghost, and celestial visitor with free will, or an RSVP, had filled the hall. Some glowed faintly, some had tails. All of them looked far too entertained. Tristan's palms were sweating. He stood before an altar of obsidian mirrors, heart thundering. The crowd blurred into a single hum. What if I'm just the accident, he whispered, voice small. Zaire's expression softened instantly. He turned, addressing the entire hall. By the law of intent, I offer him freedom. His voice filled the space like music. If he denies me now, the vow dissolves. No punishment, no binding, no shame. Mora actually dropped her clipboard.
Zaire looked back at Tristan, and the world went quiet. You owe me nothing, Tristan. It should have been a relief. It was everything Tristan had been afraid to want, and it hit like a punch because he didn't want to leave. His throat worked once, then he stepped forward. One heartbeat, then another. You're infuriating, he said, voice shaking. You could have just asked me to stay. I needed you to choose it. Tristan laughed, half-choked, and then, before the king of the underworld could say another impossible thing, grabbed his lapel and kissed him. The room erupted. Cheers, howls, the sound of at least one imp fainting. Kellen sobbed audibly somewhere near the cake. Mora muttered, "That's not on the schedule," but even she smiled. Zaire's hand rose instinctively, settling against Tristan's cheek. When they parted, the hall buzzed with electric joy, the air alive with the taste of stormlight. The vows were brief, but burned themselves into eternity. Tristan's voice shook once, then steadied. I choose the man who laughs like thunder and kneels to a child. Zaire's gaze didn't waver. I choose the mortal who gave my silence a heartbeat. The crowd stilled. Even the molten river seemed to slow.
Mora lifted the obsidian circlet, the crown of the consort, and placed it gently on Tristan's head. Zaire leaned close, whispering, "Still think it was an accident?" Tristan's answer was a grin and another kiss. When their mouths met this time, the realm itself responded. Candles flared, bells in distant towers rang without hands, and the scent of pear and sugar mingled into a lightning-sweet ozone that danced through every corridor. The ceremony was over, but hell had never felt more like heaven. Except, of course, someone had to ruin it. Smar, the demoted duke, hadn't learned humility. He appeared in the middle of the applause, fury carved into every movement. His hand shot out, casting a curse so black it rippled through the hall like spilled ink. Tristan froze as his shadow detached from his feet, writhing across the floor, bound in chains of dark light. The hall gasped. Unfit, Smar spat. Let him exist without what ties him to this place. Zaire's voice went quiet, dangerous. Release him. The Duke only smiled. Make me. Tristan could barely move. He could feel his heartbeat in the air, his voice stolen by fear. Then something deeper stirred. A memory of the trial, of Zaire kneeling to a child, of every time he'd been given a choice instead of a command. He drew breath. I don't need you to define me, he said, and his voice cracked like thunder through glass. My name is Tristan Vale, and I am not your shadow. The chains shattered. Light poured back into him. Wild, bright, pure love turned weapon. Zaire moved in a blur, hand outstretched. The Duke's curse disintegrated into sparks. He lowered his hand slowly, eyes fixed on Tristan. In my realm, Zaire said, calm and absolute. Loyalty is jurisdiction. Every noble dropped to one knee. Tristan stood there trembling, his crown slightly askew, looking every bit like someone who just fought and won against millennia of arrogance. Zaire stepped closer, cupped his face, and whispered, You keep surprising me. Good, Tristan whispered back. I'm not done yet. The wedding night was quieter, softer. Their private suite looked out over the endless dark city, candlelight painting the room gold. A bowl of pears sat on the table beside 2 glasses of wine, untouched. Zaire loosened his tie, watching Tristan from across the room. You're staring, he murmured. I'm memorizing, Tristan said, barefoot, still wearing the crown crookedly. Zaire smiled. You could take that off. You first. The air between them shifted. Playful teasing gave way to something slower, heavier. Zaire stepped forward until the space between them disappeared. The first touch wasn't desperate, it was deliberate. Hands at Tristan's hips, thumbs tracing lazy circles. Tristan's fingers slid over the fine line of Zaire's jaw, down to his throat, feeling the pulse that shouldn't exist, but did for him. Their shirts slipped away like whispers. The room filled with the soft sounds of breath, the brush of skin against fabric. When Zaire kissed him, it was slow, like reverence turned physical. The world shrank to sensation, the rhythm of joined breaths, the soft press of palms, the warmth that gathered in every point of contact. Lightning sweet ozone filled the air again, and the candles leaned toward them as if drawn to the gravity of their closeness. The stars outside blinked out one by one, politely averting their gaze. The world bent around their breaths, and for that night, even eternity looked away. Morning came on tiptoe. Tristan woke first, or half-woke, face buried in a pillow that smelled like midnight sugar and warm skin. His voice came out muffled. "I'm never living this down." Behind him, Zaire's laugh vibrated through the mattress. "Good morning, my king." Tristan groaned. "Please don't call me that." "I'm afraid it's policy." He turned over just in time to see Mora sweeping into the doorway, clipboard already poised.
"Majesties," she greeted as if nothing were unusual about barging into the honeymoon suite. "A few post-ceremonial updates." "Oh, good, you're both dressed in at least one layer." "Mora," Tristan said weakly, "why are you like this?" "Because someone has to be." Kellen peeked in from behind her, teary-eyed and grinning. "We made you a binder, Consort Orientation 2.0, with color-coded tabs." Ash appeared next, somehow holding the remaining half of the cake. "Also, breakfast." Tristan threw a pillow at him. "Out!" Zaire was laughing again, quietly into his hand. "You realize they're going to worship you now." Tristan rolled onto his side, hair falling into his eyes. "Nah, I think they already do you enough for the both of us." "Perhaps," Zaire said, "but only one of us is wearing the crown." Tristan reached up, took it off, and placed it gently on the table between them. "Then we'll share it," he said. They ended up on the balcony, 2 cups of black coffee steaming beside a plate of pear halves. The realm stretched beneath them, rivers of gold light twisting through the dark like veins in a living heart. Neither spoke for a while. The silence was easy now, full instead of empty. Zaire looked at him, expression unreadable, but soft. "You're not afraid anymore." "Of death?" Tristan asked. "Of love," Zaire said. Tristan smiled. "I think I stopped being afraid the moment I realized you're terrible at pretending you don't care." Zaire's laughter was quiet, but it lingered. The wind, or what passed for it here, moved around them gently, carrying the scent of pears and distant rain. They sat close enough that their shoulders touched, watching the horizon where no sun rose, and yet the world glowed anyway. Between them, the crown gleamed faintly, reflecting both their faces in its curve. They ruled softly, the mortal heart teaching death how to live. Thank you for listening to MangaLove Storytelling. If you find the story meaningful and enjoyable, please remember to give MangaLove a like and subscribe so you won't miss the newest stories. Wishing you a wonderful day.